Listen properly.
Hello again, troublemakers. You've just tuned into another round of chaos, controversy, and a little too much spot stirring right here on the Footsack Files. Okay, before we hand out today's Empty Skull Award, let me quickly whet your appetite for something big coming up on the 1st of November. An expose, not just shocking, it's genuinely useful, and you'll walk away smarter for it. Well, if you've been here since the early days, you'll remember some of my background. But for those of you who've just joined, I'm a former Lieutenant Colonel in the South African Police Service with almost 19 years of service. Well, there's my cap. After that, I served 8 years as a special investigator at the US Embassy in Pretoria. So when I share insights, they're not based on speculation. They come from real world experience and events I've personally lived through. But here's a skeleton about to tumble out of my closet. So, apart from my almost 3 decades in law enforcement, I also spent a few years in, listen properly, the motoring industry. Yes, the motoring industry, you heard correctly. And what I learned there is an entire can of worms. The dealerships would rather you never opened. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this one, especially if you're planning on buying a pre owned car anytime soon. Now then, it's time to award the Empty Skull Award to the biggest empty skull who has truly outdone themselves in recent events. So, without any further ado, the second Empty Skull Award goes to none other than Carl Niehaus. And yes, he's just as dumb as he looks in the picture. He earned this prestigious title by once again throwing his weight behind a terrorist group, and in doing so, proving beyond doubt that these vile excuses for human beings really do shield themselves behind children. Empty skulled Carl has, quite unintentionally, captured it perfectly in this picture. And this response to his brain dead post on X was one of the most noteworthy. It read, "Honestly, Carl, I understand that you might not be the brightest bulb in the box, but are you really going to try and convince the world that terrorists are the victims when we are discussing Gaza and October 7? Hamas went out and murdered 1,200 plus Israelis. And then they found out. Congratulations, Carl. You've finally proven that Empty Skull isn't just a nickname, it's a lifestyle. All right, now that we've got the formalities out of the way, I want to thank you for the great response on the last episode. I've picked a few comments to highlight here before we get started. Jacoberger said, "General, nope. They despise the West but love the titles. Shining cars and glamorous lifestyle." Rodney Green said the justice system is more for the criminal and not for the victim. I can't argue with that. Gregory McNear said, "When are the military veterans like me and many others getting our pension from the government like MK so-called veterans? I'm 67, haven't received one pension salary to date." Well, Gregory, probably because you weren't a terrorist. Oh, I mean a freedom fighter. But on a serious note, I did find out for you that you apparently have to apply to the Department of Military Veterans. They say it takes a long time before you get it, like anything else in this country. So just apply if you haven't already and hang on, as it is by law something that you're entitled to. I'll keep my fingers crossed. RT Creation said, "Dankie vir jou pragtige bydrae. Dit bring perspektief en insig tot sake wat soms oor my kop gaan." Pierre Marais said, "There was a ANC camp in Angola called Quattro. That is where dissidents in the ANC MK landed up and where some of the worst atrocities were ever committed. Ask Jacob Zuma and other senior ANC cadres." Stuart Gamble said, "The Empty Skull Award is going to take up all of your time. There are so many worthy contenders, you'll be here until doomsday." Stuart, I actually agree. That is why I can only award one at a time. But at least I am assured of a sufficient number of award recipients actually to last until doomsday. Shark RB said, "Excellent episode. Thank you, sir. It's only a pleasure." Edwin O'Connor said, "How can man working for the Joburg municipality be elevated to 2IC of the National Police Force? No wonder criminals run South Africa." Well, Edwin, it is called cadre deployment. Alina Leonovich said, "Great idea of award." Well, thanks, Alina. I still do have my moments, just not enough to make it a habit. Nicola Cacciopo, I hope I pronounced that correctly. "Thank you, sir, for taking the time to explain and educate us. Much appreciated. I really enjoy the clips. I'm glad you do." Craig Bennett said, "Never forget this country had a negotiated settlement, CODESA, not an outright surrender to the ANC. They seem to think we just surrendered. That is how they are carrying on." Hans Forster said, "Mal Emma should be the winner in every episode. Wanna bet?" Hans, I know. That's why he was the inspiration for the award, and we will be reminded of it every time it's awarded. But all right, that's as far as the comments go for today. I wish I could feature even more, but there are just too many, and I appreciate it. Please remember, I really do read every single one, and I really appreciate you taking your precious time to share your thoughts. So please keep them coming. Okay, today's episode is about one of the most controversial deaths of South Africa's recent history, the death of Steve Bantu Biko. Now, almost 48 years later, South Africa has decided to reopen the inquest into how he died. But why? What can they possibly hope to prove? And just how on earth can a court determine responsibility almost after 5 decades, when basically everyone already accepted that he died from head injuries in police custody? Just a bit of background. Steve Biko was the founder of the Black Consciousness Movement on September 12, 1977, coincidentally just the day after my 10th birthday. Just a bit of useless info. Biko died in police custody. The official report claimed he had collapsed from a hunger strike and related complications, but the autopsy told a slightly different story. It revealed brain hemorrhage caused by severe head trauma. At the time, a judicial inquest was held under Magistrate Martinus Prince, and while the court confirmed that Biko died of a brain injury, it still accepted the police version that no one was criminally responsible. So 2 decades later, during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC hearings in 1997, 5 former policemen admitted to assaulting Biko during interrogation. They claimed that they had not intended to kill him, and, well, unsurprisingly, amnesty was denied. So if the cause of death was known for decades, why open the case again? The official line is that new investigative capacity and modern forensic techniques can help piece together what really happened and hold individuals accountable. Now I have 2 basic questions here. Firstly, I can't help but chuckle when anyone these days mention something like newer forensic techniques. Why? Because yes, they do exist, but definitely not in this third world police service we have today. No, long gone is the state-of-the-art, world-class General Lothar Neethling police forensic facility, the old regime handed over to the ANC government. And what did they do with it? They just let it deteriorate into nothingness. Pathetic incompetence. Pathetic incompetence. Secondly, the individuals they're going after, the former policemen, are now all in their 80s. Are these geniuses really planning to burst into old age care facilities with a task force team and drag these men out of their wheelchairs, and then hope they still live long enough to be thrown into jail for what, a week or two? Did they learn nothing from Sergeant Joe Rodriguez's failed prosecution? The 5 former security policemen who applied for amnesty in the Steve Biko case and who had actually made admissions before the TRC were Colonel Harold Snyman, Lieutenant Colonel Gideon Nieuwoud, Captain Daintjie Siebert, Warrant Officer Ruben Marks, and Warrant Officer Johan Beneke. Of the 5, 2 had long since passed away. Colonel Snyman died in 1998. Well, that's 27 years ago. And Lieutenant Colonel Nieuwoud in August 2005, 20 years ago. Warrant Officer Ruben Marks has also passed away. Only Captain Daintjie Siebert and Warrant Officer Johan Beneke are still believed to be alive, both now in their 80s. So again, who exactly are they hoping to prosecute here? Apparently the case is being revived because Squirrel Ramaphosa ordered inquiries into whether apartheid-era prosecutions were deliberately stalled for political reasons. Let's be honest, this reeks of political theatre. Squirrel's political future is on the life support, and he desperately needs to score points wherever he can. He'll do anything to survive politically, including selling his soul. Well, that's if he still has one. So-called justice is just a convenient label to slap onto the package. And if he intends to reopen the Steve Biko case, is he also going to reopen the Church Street bombing that killed and maimed scores of innocent civilians, black and white? Or does that not fit his very narrow narrative? So, how can a court decide after nearly 50 years? A modern inquest isn't the same as a full criminal trial. Its purpose is to determine how someone died and whether their death was caused by the unlawful act or omission of another person. But I thought we already knew that. Isn't it old news already? So apparently they will re-examine medical records and autopsy records. Hear from any surviving witnesses, if there are any left. Police, doctors, fellow detainees, well, the 2 or 3 that are still alive, at least. And just one of my dumb questions again. So, how on earth do they expect any of these witnesses to remember what happened, let alone the finer details that are crucial in any inquest? Well, I can't even remember my own 10th birthday, and that was the day before Biko's demise. Okay, wait, I do remember one thing. My grandpa called me to congratulate me on reaching a double-digit age. But that's it. Everything else, gone. So good luck with getting 80-year-old memories out of anyone with precision. So, good luck getting 80-year-old memories out of anyone with precision. They will also consider expert testimony from modern forensic specialists. Well, definitely not police forensic specialists, because there aren't any. They've all resigned. And review any newly discovered or previously hidden state documents. Sounds spectacular, doesn't it? Except for one tiny problem. 48 years have passed. There's almost no physical evidence left. There's nothing to exhume but dust. And testimonies from that era, they contradict each other constantly. So while the court can't magically recreate 1977, it will still issue a new finding somehow. But to me, it will feel more like a legal opinion than a groundbreaking finding. So let's also keep in mind the excellent quality of the majority of judges sitting on the bench these days. The former judge president of the Western Cape being the most shining example, some of whom got their so-called qualifications from dubious universities and backstreet colleges that have since vanished. And some of these qualifications were definitely paid for. So, here's the reality. Everyone knows that Steve Biko didn't die from a hunger strike or natural causes. He died from head injuries sustained in police custody. That fact has been cleared for nearly 5 decades. The only question now is whether a modern court can definitively say, in black and white, who was to blame. But the problem is, we already know. 5 former policemen admitted to it during the TRC hearings. I don't know what purpose they ever served. So, what is the point now? Maybe another round of moral grandstanding to remind the world again how terrible it was. Well, then, by that logic, maybe we should also commemorate the Church Street bombing 6 years later in 1983 and remember the 19 innocent people killed and more than 200 others maimed in that terrorist attack. Well, let's see how this plays out. I suspect it will be another circus performance by a kangaroo court to entertain the masses, including you and me. And of course, the chief clown sitting in the VIP seat, Squirrel himself. But okay, thank you sincerely for watching. If you found this episode insightful, please hit like, share, and subscribe. And if you really enjoyed my content, which I can't think that you didn't, please consider joining as a member. It will really help us continue the good work we're doing with the feral cats, especially if you're an animal lover. But please let me know in the comments. Do you think this new inquest will really deliver anything of real value? I'd like to hear from you. But until next time, please keep safe and I'll see you soon. Cheers.